How the heretics! I never done this before. Can you hear me? I just bought myself a new toy. Can you wave or something here? I never tried this before. I just put it on first and someone thought I was sick or something. So I'm waiting for Jeff. And here's Jeff. Okay, so I give to you Jeff.
Hi, how are you? Howdy, heretics.
Why can't I hear him? Is it this? Can I hear you now?
I think so. I said
Yep.
howdy. Hopefully my audio is good. Let me check.
Now I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, good. So that guy, well, I see him there. He is a Watchtower historian, and you can see all the book. You see, I'm not a nerd. He's the nerd with all the books. So tell us, why do you study Watchtower? And yeah, tell us about your new channel and everything.
My story is a little different than most. I didn't grow up a Christian, but the Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on our door when I was a teenager, and we studied with them for a couple of years. And
Okay.
I found them quite fascinating. I didn't find the doctrines all that fascinating, but and I did not become a Jehovah's Witness, and I was never baptized a witness. But the history always intrigued me. So over the years, I've amassed quite a collection, as you see usually behind me on the videos that we've been making. And then my friend Paul has been joining me in the discussions, and he's a fun guy, like you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yes, no, it's just fascinating when okay, I grew up in the cult, and it's still in your head. It's just like a whirlpool, but you were never even in it. You just skip straight to all the Watchtower history. It's kind of interesting.
So I can walk the line, because I am friends with some Jehovah's Witnesses who are historians.
Okay.
And I've helped them on some projects, and I'm friends with some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are historians, and I've helped them on projects as well. So I'm in between, both of them. So I kind of walk that line, just a fine line to walk.
Yeah. So he sent me. Okay, so it's a part of a Jehovah's Witness culture is you're brutally honest and give people unsolicited advice. That can be a good thing, but he sent me his first video and asked me what I thought, and I watched it once and twice. No, I didn't even watch it through because I'm sorry to say it was so bad. I gave him really, really, really constructive criticism, but I actually thought I would never ever hear from him again because it was really brutal. And then he sent me a new link and said I can watch it, and sooner after a while I did, and well, he did progress. Really. So I actually promised I would help him to get the channel to grow, because it's actually fun, and he's like the secret newspaper. Watchtower had their own newspaper that was incorporated in the Watchtower, and also tell us a story about Rutherford and a strip club. Unless it's a secret.
I like how you described that, but I don't know if I would quite put it that way. But there was a letter that went around in the 1920s. One of the writers of the 7th volume, The Finished Mystery, the Ezekiel part, so the less strange part of the book, right?
Yeah.
The Revelation part was
the
really
strange
weird
part of the book, not the sane part of the book.
But he saw Rutherford go into a burlesque.
Okay.
And it was a nude one. So a strip
that would be
club.
Strip club.
Yeah. And they set up to have a disfellowship trial. And that wasn't the only reason. There were some other things that happened as well, which we'll detail in the video that I'm currently editing. But
that was the 1920. That must have been during the power struggle, for power.
Well, the power struggle already was over by that point. Most of it was already done. So I detail a lot of the splinter groups as well in some of our videos. PSL Johnson was one of the big ones. So some of the things he was writing in the 1920s, you can see Rutherford react to, or what Rutherford was writing, Johnson was reacting to. So it's interesting to go back and forth and look at what they're writing between the two men, because they really affected each other and developed, I think, what became Watchtower dogma of today because of those debates.
So they were debating each other on their own platforms.
Yeah, they were trying to, if you look at some of the passages and say, hey, this type or this prophecy is all about me, therefore it proves I'm the chosen one, right?
Yeah.
I went to prison, so I must be the chosen one, Rutherford said.
Rutherford said that.
Yeah.
Like when you didn't visit me, Jesus said you didn't visit me in prison, and Rutherford said that was him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a 1923 article
say the same thing.
And Johnson did the same thing. He would find all sorts of Bible passages and say, hey, it's all about me, so it proves I'm the chosen one. So the two guys are going back and forth. It's really fascinating, that. And I'm going to document that in a video we're working on now.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually fun. It's really easy to find stuff in the Bible, just point that this is about me. If you're just a narcissist, you can do it. Like I always say, Jesus said that he would put the goats on his left side. Well, Jesus will sit by the Father's right side. So if Jesus put the goats on the left side, that means I will be sitting between Jehovah and Jesus.
On my screen, you are on the left and I am on the right.
Yeah.
So it does fit well.
No, it's fascinating. Okay, but what happened with the strip club thing? Or should you just keep it as a teaser for your video?
No, really, there's a lot more to it, but basically the gentleman had two witnesses. He was ready to take it to the Brooklyn congregation, and he died of a heart attack.
Okay.
So nothing ever happened for it. But that letter got circulated again, like 10, 20 years later, amongst the German Bible students because of what was going on. And Rutherford had to react to it multiple times. But each time Rutherford reacted to it in the Golden Age magazine at the time, his responses were lame. I don't know what other word to use, but as some of them being, well, it must be, if you saw it, it must be an imposter because I wasn't there. Or I never heard of the guy. Well, that's not the guy. It was the show you went to, but it's just lame excuses.
Okay, basically fake news.
Fake news, yeah.
Yeah. And I promise, so this is just, I got a new toy, it's fun to play with a new toy. So I just sent the link to my patrons. So they, now Mabbity Babbity, I said, if they want to ask a question to a Watchtower historian, let's just add this person to the stream.
Oh.
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. I'm just excited to help you play with your new toy, and I like watching and listening.
But you are online now.
Yes, I am. I'm pretty introverted, so I don't mind staying in the background, and I can like put a question in the chat box if I have something to say. But anyway, carry on. I am enjoying it.
Yes, but you're live now. You can say anything that's what you say in America, PG. I approve.
Anything. Okay. Well, I'm not a former Jehovah's Witness. I come from a long family of Mormons. But my grandmother was the one that left. So I still have to go to reunions at times, but they suck.
So your parents were not Mormons?
No. My father actually had to go and excommunicate himself before he could get married to her because they kept bothering him. Because I guess his great-grandmother had taken the kids and gotten them baptized without telling the mom. Anyway, but that's neither here nor there. A while back, like 20 years ago or so, I did kind of do the whole born-again Christianity because I was having trouble in a relationship. But if I get into something, I want to know what it is. So I attended their Bible college. And it only took about a year before I was like, I was bringing up, have you seen Dogma, the movie?
No.
And the way they were just like, oh, she's talking about Satan. And I'm like, what's the matter with you guys? It's fiction. It didn't stick very much. So, but I find cult behaviors and just the way the human mind goes that way, how we get brainwashed and not even realizing that we are brainwashed. And then that starts me on this whole thing where it's like trying to be a skeptic, and I start thinking to myself, oh, I got it figured out. And then I'm like, wait a second, I need to turn this to myself and look again. Am I actually assuming things about others that, that I accuse them of doing to me? So it's just a constant teeter-totter kind of thing, But I very much enjoy your program. That's why I became a patron.
Yeah, thank you. But do you have a question for Jeff? He's the historian.
I don't at the moment, because I just popped in, and so I'm just kind of catching up with what you guys are talking about.
I do have a comment, though. My friend Paul, who I have the discussions with, he likes the psychology part of it. And so he's trying to create some outlines for some future discussions where we're going to talk a little bit about that, because that's what really fascinates him. So if you have some ideas, leave comments on our channel, and we've got a long list. So what order do we put it in, right?
Expand the conversation.
Yeah. And his channel is called WT History.
Okay. All right. I'll look into it.
So,
just look up Judge Rutherford death threat, and you'll find it.
Okay. So let's see how so now I'm going to remove you. Okay. So thanks for calling. Oh, that's fun. Okay, I feel like a disc jockey. No, I never done this before, so it's fun to try a new tool. So I wish I could have my hat, because I'm a bald white guy sitting under a light. So
I'm losing mine. So
yeah,
and I need a COVID haircut or something.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So a question about Rutherford now, because he said they were going to disfellowship him. But the disfellowshipping arrangement did not really exist until 1951, I think.
Well, that's another future discussion we're going to have, is the development of the disfellowship doctrine and the various phases it went through up to the 50s, right?
Yeah.
But also the two-witness rule is very much involved in that as well.
Okay.
And I've been doing research on that. I found that the two-witness rule, this really started to change in 1929 in an article Rutherford wrote, and he tied it in with 1929.
Okay.
And he tied it in with the higher authorities of Romans 13 and said, the higher authorities are the anointed class, are basically saying it's me, right? So if I'm the higher authority, you don't need to take the matters to the congregation. Just take it to me or the elders I appoint. And then he can make anything happen that he wants, right? Because he handpicks who he wants to lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a summary of a video in 10 seconds, right? But we'll have all the details.
I would like to know, because I remember, we grew up with a lot of stories about how the Jehovah's Witnesses did not cooperate with the Nazis, and there was a lot of hardship and a lot of sacrifice, and basically a lot of German witnesses did the right thing. But then I found out a Norwegian witness that told me about, he worked for the Germans as an entrepreneur, direct in with military installations, basically building stuff. So that was the opposite. And I, as a witness, I was thinking about it. I couldn't understand why wasn't he disfellowshipped or something. But then I thought that this fellowship arrangement didn't exist.
Right.
But did it exist after the war or during the war? So there was basically an elder in my congregation that had, while being a Jehovah's Witness, being an entrepreneur, building military installation for the Germans.
It did exist. They were told even in the 20s, if you see somebody that you disagree with, that you've pushed out of the congregation, don't even talk to him. Stay on the other side of the street. So I'm going to have the details of that and build it up. That's probably 2-3 discussions down the line. We've already filmed a couple, so it's just the editing process. And I probably should just record and not edit, but it's so much nicer to tweak it and move things around. It makes it look better.
You're getting better. And remember what I told. It's so fun because he listened to my advice. I just really gave him 10 buckets of crap, you know. And you listened to it. I actually thought you would.
I appreciated it because it's honest. It was honest and needed, and so
but
I didn't do everything you said, but I'm trying.
No. But one thing I did say is to tell a lot of people with YouTube, you know, that if you're going to start a YouTube channel, do that, but don't think like the first video should be a masterpiece. You know, just start with a lot of short videos because you learn more and more. And all YouTubers hate their first video anyway. So it's better to make it 5 minutes and hate the 5 minutes and maybe remove it and make a new later.
I think I like mine, but everyone else hates it, so that's okay.
No, it's about catching people's interest. You only have 7 seconds to catch people's interest. So if you see like cable TV, they often start with some fighting and we're gonna learn this and blah 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 and straight to the point, and then they take the intro. I think your intro was 36 seconds. You have to get to the point. Yeah, we talked about it already. No, I really recommend his channels. I'm not making fun of him now. I've seen it. It was actually fun. Tell us about the newspaper. Watchtower had a newspaper, not Watchtower, obviously.
It was an independent
actual newspaper.
It was an actual newspaper. Well, I thought I would have one nearby, but I don't. If I knew, I would have pulled one out. But there was a newspaper that was during the time of Charles Taze Russell. That was just a regular old newspaper.
And the guy Bulletin?
The St. Paul Enterprise in St. Paul, Minnesota. And the guy accidentally picked up one of Charles Taze Russell's sermons of the week, and it caused quite a controversy. So a lot of people wrote in saying, well, we don't want to see this again. And some wrote in saying, well, let us see it. And the guy said, well, I'm 300 subscribers and I'll keep publishing for a while. Well, I guess they found like almost 1,000 in a short time. And he liked what he saw and became a Bible student. So it became a Bible student paper, independent, of course. But privately owned.
Because it was already in existence.
But when Russell died and Rutherford took over, this guy died a couple months later. And so the Watchtower was very involved with the paper, but it was still independent. So by the time you get to the end of the 1920s, they were having more and more independence, and the paper just abruptly ends. All we have is the end of microfilm and don't really know what happened to the paper. But we paid for a lot of microfilms from the Historical Society and then had them scanned.
Yeah.
But there's interesting stories in there, which we keep adding into our videos. So when this disfellowship one, we'll have some of those stories as well. And the sheep and the goats one we're planning, which is the second trumpet blast.
I want to hear about the sheep and the goats because that's fascinating. Did Jehovah's Witness culture, they are like allergic to goats because it was such a big part that we are separating the goats from the sheep, the work we do. So
for me, the fascinating story of that, and I'm giving the punchline away, is, and I think we already talked about it a little bit ago, is Rutherford was trying to find some passages in the Bible to apply to himself.
Yeah.
Or if he had all the authority over all the splinter groups that were out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he saw the passage that said, did you serve me when I was in prison? He says basically, well, there were Bible students in prison, but I went to prison too. So this is all about me, because Matthew 24 is the faithful and discreet slave. That's me. And all these other parables are all about me too. And so there's a whole series of them that he does in 1923, trying to prove. Basically, he says, I'm the chosen one, trying to prove he's the chosen one.
Huh.
And little Jehovah's Witnesses know today that that's where it all started, was from that subject.
The goats.
Yeah.
How did he apply the goats and the sheep on him? Like the
Well, he was
splinter
saying
groups
that
were
anyone that they gave the message to, or the splinter groups that split off, they were goats, and his group were the sheep.
Okay.
And so they were making a judgment on those who left and those who wouldn't hear their message.
Yeah, because the Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in goats like the devil being a shape of a goat like that. So like some Christians do. I know there were some paintings with Russell about the devil with horn and stuff. Well, like a classical devil anyway. But every time when I tell witnesses that the goat is actually a symbol of Jesus, they get so...
In the tabernacle arrangement, there was
the scapegoat. And it's funny, the Watchtower, they kind of don't. I like goats, believe it or not, but Watchtower don't. So it's actually an interesting story because I don't believe in the Bible, but I read it. And you would have two goats. One of them who would be slaughtered for the people, and the other one were sent away. And they were carrying the sins of the nation, And obviously, the scapegoat was a symbol of Jesus. Watchtower say it's a symbol of Jesus, but in what do you call it? The Pentateuch, the tabernacle stuff.
Yeah.
They had two goats, and they never comment that. But actually, if you think about it, Barabbas, it means Bar Abbas, son of God. And some translations refer to Barabbas as Jesus Barabbas, Joshua Barabbas. So basically, this story about Jesus and Pilate, he basically said, should I release Jesus, son of God, or Barabbas, son of God?
Well, it depends on where you look, because sometimes the serpent is a symbol of Jesus too, because the New Testament tells you that they put the serpent up on the pole and they had to look to it.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of the stories of the Old Testament, or even a lot of the stories lately, the Jehovah's Witnesses just have a simple overview of it. You read the Beloved Governing Body by what's his name?
Furuli.
Yeah. You said it better than I can.
Yeah, there's an English word called thoroughly. Like when you do something really good, you do it thoroughly.
But that's how he was basically saying that
thoroughly.
They're writing their articles now saying, well, this is what it seems like to us, or what it feels like, or it's a good moral lesson. But they make the stories basically meaningless. Everything's so watered down anyway. There's not very much substance to the magazines these days.
Yeah, it used to be. Okay, so I was a kid back then, but I was kind of proud that Jehovah's Witnesses were kind of academic. We were studying and everything was complicated. Obviously, that was because I was a child, but, it felt like, it's this means that, and that means this, and this represents, and this, and that was 1914 and 1918 and 19, we're learning all of that. Now it's just... I don't recognize the religion at all. It's just do what you're told and don't.
I've been talking to a Jehovah's Witness friend since October or so. Mm-hmm. And so we actually have a Bible study, verse by verse through the Bible, not through their books. And he said he'd never done a verse by verse study in his life. But he gave me the link to their Kingdom Hall meetings. So I hop in just to listen while I'm doing something else. And I don't know how anyone can get anything out of it. It's so mind-numbing. There's very little substance in it. And when they talk about association, because everything's on Zoom, there is no association. Before the meeting, you have 50 people all talking at once saying hello, and they're going through a list of names. And then at the end of the meeting, they do the same thing, but there's really no discussion at all. It's quite peculiar. And they don't know who I am. And they know I'm a name.
You can join a Zoom meeting even if you're not a witness.
Yeah. Yeah. But they
And you
never
can
say
raise your hand
anything
and
to me
answer?
for months. No, I don't. I know they wouldn't. If I raised my hand, they wouldn't let me do that anyway. But
Why not? Is it like a policy or?
yeah, they actually said that for one of their Watchtower studies when they talked about the change of the locus doctrine. They actually mentioned right in front of the meeting, you know, this study is just for Jehovah's Witnesses, and no non-Jehovah's Witnesses are not allowed to participate. So it's very interesting. I actually recorded that conversation, so if anyone needs it, email me and I'll send you that clip. But it's peculiar, and I've been going for months, and you don't get a single hello. And sometimes if I say hello, they don't even respond back. It's paranoia, I tell you, complete paranoia.
Yeah. Yeah,
Who is this guy?
weird. It's weird. No, yeah, probably. I think witnesses, they will move in the direction of the Plymouth Brethren. You know, the exclusive brethren. They keep. They go to church 7 days a week to keep you constantly distracted. You know, and you're not allowed to talk to other people. So, and you're not allowed to eat with other people that are not, because they're exclusive. So,
Yeah,
and they
well, there's
really
a Bible
don't
passage,
preach.
don't eat with such a one, right? So I'm assuming that's why.
So, and you can't live in an apartment building because then you're living under the same roof. You can stay at a hotel, but basically all of them has to be living in their own houses or with other members because of those rules. But the point is that they can keep a grip of the people growing up in the cult. We have two of those congregations in Sweden. They are international, but they are really small in comparison to Jehovah's Witnesses. And I know they do cart witnessing.
Probably. They're not the only ones.
Yeah, kind of cart witnessing. They're just standing with some tracts on the street and people walk by. Because people are basically good. So if you have this idea that everyone else should die, everyone else should die in Armageddon and they deserve to die, you got to feel that somehow they got a fighting chance.
That's one of the discussions we want to come up. I'm making an outline for that now. Is where did this Armageddon idea from the Jehovah's Witnesses come from, and how did that evolve? What was the original idea, and where did it go? Well, we know where it is now, but I think the public would be surprised to find out what the original idea was.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll pop into the Kingdom Hall just to pick up some of the magazines or literature, and I'll stick around for the meeting. And if they and I travel around the country and around the world a lot. So I stopped in Green Bay, Wisconsin, about 6 months ago, and went to the Kingdom Hall there, and got the literature that I wanted. And they asked me, "Well, where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from Illinois here." Well, that's out of our territory. And so then they started to turn and talk to their friends about golfing later on.
Mm-hmm.
If your goal is to try and separate the sheep and the goats, and if you're blood guilty if you don't go and witness to save them, why are you talking to them about golf and not trying to talk to me and trying to save me? It's very strange. Yeah. So I questioned him on it and said, shouldn't you be out, witnessing and not being out golfing? Should be talking to me, His friend laughed and said, he's got you there. So.
I just see some of my patrons here, Joel, and the other one is here. And if you go to Patreon, you will find, Becky gave us $50. Thank you very much, Becky. Thanks for honoring Goat like with your valuable things. But if you go to Patreon, and there's a link there, so you do what Mabity did, and just join here, and you can ask Jeff any questions you want. So. Yeah, no, it's fascinating.
And some of these historical stories, are just funny.
Okay.
So I was talking about when the Finished Mystery was released, and these are the stories you don't hear from the Watchtower, right?
No.
I heard a story where they were reading the book and they started laughing. And the sister turned to the other one and said, what are you laughing about? What's so funny? And she said, well, when you get to page such and such, you'll see what's funny. So when she got there, she started chuckling also. You know what it was? It was the 1,600 furlongs. As long as you measure from Scranton all the way to Brooklyn, as long as you take the Hoboken ferry, it proves that the writing of that book must have been chosen of God, right?
Yeah.
Because of the distance. Well, on the St. Paul Enterprise, I found an article, and I didn't comment on it.
Yeah, you had to take a ferry. You couldn't take the railroad because then it was the wrong distance.
Right. Well, I forgot to comment on it in the meeting, in the discussion we had, in the video I'm editing now. But there's an article in the St. Paul Enterprise where they not only measure from Scranton to Brooklyn, but they also measure to Atlanta, where they went to prison. And whatever measurement they have there, they're trying to prove, well, because we went to prison, it proves we were the chosen ones of God again. So very peculiar, funny things in there.
Yeah, I like the whole idea with watched, because it's basically their basic teaching that they were elected in 1919. It's one of the most important teachings, because I was in a Spanish congregation, and that meant we had to talk to Catholics. And basically, we had to convince the Catholics that your most important teaching is apostolic succession. Because the Pope has the power, because Peter had the power, and there must be an apostolic succession. And the Catholics say no, and we had to explain it to them over and over and over again. And then in the end, they said, well, okay, yes, maybe we do believe in apostolic succession. And as soon as after we explained it to them, so they understood what they believe, then we went, and you're wrong.
But isn't that what the Jehovah's Witnesses believe too, in a certain way?
Yeah, now they believe it.
Yeah.
But that's the funny thing, because we used to say that the most important teaching of the Catholics were apostolic succession, because everyone agreed what Jesus said to Peter, but that there's a line of apostles all the way to the Pope, today. And Catholics don't think about that as their most important teaching,
Well, 1919, now there's no way they compute the date. But they used to have a way that they computed it, because they used to count the 1,260 days, 290 days, and all of that from that particular date. And they went from one exact day to another exact day. So we discussed that in one of our videos, one of our discussions. But they modified it so many times because they realized it didn't work. And they kept stretching it and stretching it and stretching it until they just don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, if that's the most important teaching of the Catholics, well, then by the same logic, the 1919 teaching should be the most important teaching from the Jehovah's Witnesses. That Rutherford was elected in 1919, and they showed to Revelation, the two witnesses. So I think it says there were two witnesses preaching in sackcloth. That represents Russell living comfortably in Brooklyn. And then it says that they were lying dead for 3.5 years, I think. And 3.5 years represents a time that is longer than a time that is shorter. And then they were dead and lying on the street. That represent sitting in prison in Atlanta. And they were dead for 3.5 days, I think and that represents a time that is shorter than a time that is longer.
Yeah, but also they claimed that there was no preaching work done at the time. And so I show from the St. Paul Enterprises and some of the other periodicals of the time that the preaching work was really going on. Just Rutherford himself wasn't doing it because he was locked away.
Yeah.
It's all about Rutherford.
Yeah.
It's not what is believed, but sometimes the question for me is why. The why question is more important to me. Why did they come up with this idea? It's very fascinating.
Yeah, but then again, in Revelation it says that when they were when they came back from the dead or liberated from jail, like what shall I say? They say they were giving the power to call down fire from the sky. and that represents printing pamphlets.
Yeah, because they were printing a judgment message.
Yeah,
Those trumpet
no,
blasts,
it's so
right?
fun. And I also like the fact that there were two witnesses, because we always learn to make fun of every other religion, because they believe in 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. No, equals 1. You know, the Trinity. We were mocking the Trinity. 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. But they say the two witnesses represented Rutherford and 7 others. So
Yeah.
that's 1 + 7 = 2.
Well, I was talking about those trumpet blast messages, right? I've been going through those in some of those discussions we've been having, and most of what's even said in those trumpet blasts is no longer believed. So eventually they're going to have to change that as well. And it's already a century past. You know, so they're going to have to bring it up into more modern times, and they'll probably just make it more and more generic, as they've been doing with most of the other things, like the locust a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but that's why I think they just go into this exclusive brethren thing, that, you know, we were elected, this is the religion of our parent, you know, the preaching work is done, now we go into, you know, like waiting for Armageddon Adventist mood, you know, maybe still do cart witnessing just as a mental excuse that, well, if someone in the world really wanted to become a Jehovah's Witness, he had the opportunity. So
it's funny because
I would guess they are moving in the direction of the exclusive brethren.
It's funny because this morning when I was listening into their meeting, they were talking about the passage in the Bible that says, "No man comes unto the Father or under the Son unless the Father draw him." Yeah. And so nothing we do is going to make any difference, they said, but we need to go out there and do it anyway. What? Yeah. You're talking two sides out of your mouth at the same time.
I hated that when I was a pioneer, because every second pioneer meeting, they were guilt tripping us for the opposite thing. So they said, you know, if we don't do a good job, you know, we are blood guilt. And the next time, doesn't matter if you do a good job, because unless God draws them. And by the way, the Bible says you can't come to Christ unless the Father draws them. But, well, back in the day, we assumed when the Father, that we're talking about Watchtower, you can't come to Watchtower without the Father drawing them.
PSL Johnson will be an interesting discussion as well, historically, when we get there. Paul S.L. Johnson. He was a Jewish man in the days of Charles Taze Russell, who became a Bible student. But he's the one, him and Rutherford are the two that were on two different sides after the split. And you can basically follow them back and forth in their magazines of the time. Almost month to month, they're talking about the same exact thing. They're reacting off of each other, you know. So it's interesting.
Yeah. How many of this splint group exist kind of on a sizable size?
I know that there's multiple groups out there, and most of them are pretty small. My wife is from Romania, so we went to Romania a few times in the last couple of decades, and I happened to connect with the True Faith Jehovah's Witnesses there. They said that they were, 10 years ago, they were numbering about 35,000 at just one of their conventions, so that was a pretty good size.
Yeah, that's more than Jehovah's Witnesses in Sweden.
But when I met with them 2 years ago when we were there, the gentleman that I spoke with, he was in tears because they had a split in the movement. There was a fight over the property, and it was just a difficult experience for them. But I find them really interesting because under communism, the Watchtower Society couldn't get literature in. And when communism fell and the literature got in, you know, they looked at, you know, here's this one and here's what we had, and it's so different. They said, well, we got to be the only ones left, so we have to be the True Faith ones, right?
Yeah.
And so they separated because of just, it was almost night and day difference. It was so different, the changes in just a couple of decades.
Yeah, also the superior authorities, because those living under communism, they had been told, that the superior authorities was Jehovah and Jesus, which absolutely don't make any sense if you read a passage from the Bible directly.
Yeah.
But that's what Jehovah Witnesses believe, that the Bible is, according to Watchtower, the Bible doesn't really mean what the Bible says. And then when communism disappeared, or it was before that, they got these papers, they thought they were printed by the KGB. At least in Russia, many brothers reading the Watchtower say this is a fake Watchtower, because it says, we should do what the governments tell us. So that's obviously splinter group. But in America, but the one you were talking about, did they split up from Russell?
No, from everything after 1967.
Okay.
Is what this group holds to. And I talked to some of the other splinter groups also. I mean, there would be funny stories. They said, under communism, they couldn't have any literature. So if you wanted literature, you could have it, but you had to write it out by hand, and then hide it. Well, the funniest story I remember is they had some literature in their car or something, and the police were coming to stop them to look for it. And the policeman asked, well, hey, do you have any literature? And he says, no, but there's a guy over there across the street, and he's running with the literature right there. And they turned around, and they were running it after. Well, there's nobody there. So the guy grabbed his stuff, and he was right by a cemetery, and there was a freshly dug grave. So he hopped in there and hid there all night long. So.
Yeah, the Soviet, they had information control too. Did you see my video about when Watchtower stole printing paper, allegedly?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Okay, so I was working on Russian Bethel, and on cults like this, every level you get more information, and you kind of look down on the people, like the Pharisees. You look down at the publishers, and when you're a pioneer, I used to be a pioneer, and we used to look down at auxiliary pioneers. And Bethelites would refer to normal witnesses as worldly witnesses. It's kind of an arrogance, I think it's kind of psychological. You look at this, and on one level, okay, so I reach this level, and I get all this new information. It doesn't make sense. It's stupid. So you feel this is stupid, but that means that you must be even stupider. I don't know. Anyway, I was on Russian Bethel, and we were sitting in a sauna with an elder, and he was drunk. I was maybe tipsy. And he looked at me and said, "You are a spiritual brother. And I am a spiritual brother. We here in Bethel, we are spiritual brothers. And then, we can handle information that the normal witnesses cannot. They would be stumbled because they are weak. But we are spiritual brothers. I can give you one example." And then he told me,
I think he was imbibing the wrong kind of spirit.
Huh?
He was imbibing the wrong kind of spirits.
Yeah, no, we sat the whole day in his sauna. It was hot, and drinking beer and stuff like that. Anyway, so when the witnesses were having illegal printing operations, they would hide it in a bakery or something, and according to the literature, it says they had to go past the meter to steal electricity, because otherwise it would be really easy if Jeff is making a normal salary, but he's spending more than his actual salary on electricity. Well, even in America, people might start asking, if someone's using more money than they make, and the KGB surely would. So they were stealing electricity in order to print literature. And Watchtower make a big propaganda of that, that even though we stole electricity, we paid anonymously. And I think they did that. And in a case where someone was arrested for printing illegally, they were also charged with stealing electricity, but they could prove that they had paid anonymously, and those part of the charges were dropped. So Watchtower did not steal electricity. Well, they stole electricity, but they paid anonymously. That's all well and good. But then he told me the big problem was not electricity, because it's really easy to steal it. You just the big problem was printing paper. In Soviet, printing paper was a controlled substance, because no one can print as long as the government controlled printing paper. And the Bolsheviks themselves, like Lenin and Stalin, they had been busy before the revolution printing pamphlets. They themselves started with printing magazines illegally, distributing pamphlets and booklets and stuff illegally. So they knew very well the power of printing paper. So printing paper was a legal substance. So Watchtower it's really easy to steal electricity, but they couldn't do that with printing paper. So they basically had to steal from the government. They had to bribe someone, working on a printing factory, so he could steal in behalf of Watchtower. That's the story I got from a drunk naked elder in the sauna. Watchtower stole printing paper. Allegedly. So thank you, Gina Weiss, for a super sticker. So, and we have Joelle Brown here. She's an Australian lady, I think. Let's see if she has any questions. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Can you
And a dog. We can
puppy.
hear you.
This is Nettie, my dog.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is it like a full-time job that you do, Jeff?
I work in computers, kind of on the server side.
All right.
So
The whole-
this is just something on the side. I don't do this full time.
oh,
Joelle, can you sit closer to the microphone, because I cannot almost not hear you?
hello.
She was asking what my job was.
Yeah, I heard it, but it was low.
I work for an auction company. So when you total your car in an accident, or there's a flood or a hurricane, our company takes it for the insurance company and we auction it for them. And then we get a cut of the price from the buyers and from them. And I work on the computer side. And with COVID, I'm able to work from home. So it works well.
Have you ever been asked by JW's elders to stop what you're doing, the research into the old material, to bring up all the crap that you used to teach?
I walk a fine line, because as we said earlier, I've never been a Jehovah's Witness, but I do have some Jehovah's Witness friends. And I do assist them by trading periodicals with them on the earlier history. I live very close to a university here that has a lot of microfilms. So I've been able to scan microfilms and do research, and they're able to share with me some of their research as well. But we already went in with the supposition that we're going to disagree on the Rutherford period forward, so so no, I have gone to congregations and nobody knows who I am, but they start asking questions, and then I'm taken in a back room and questioned by 5 elders, even though I've never been a Jehovah's Witness. I just know too much. Yeah.
You're questioned by the elders.
Yeah. Why are you here?
Because you know more than they do, probably.
Have they taken your picture?
No
No,
picture.
they should have done that. Bad elders. They don't know the routines.
This was years ago, before cell phones and simple ways to do that,
Yeah, but if they would have called the service department, then the elders would come and say, "Could we please take a picture of you?" And then they would take a picture of you, sent to them, so they know who you are.
How do you get into one of their Zoom meetings?
Yes, I'm actually attending Zoom meetings because I've been talking to a Jehovah's Witness friend, and I just told him I have questions, and we debate our differences of opinion for months. We don't look at any of their literature. We just talk about our differences of opinion. So he gave me the Zoom meeting links. So I've been hopping in and listening to the Zoom meetings, and some of the things that Mike and Kim say in their show, like about the food bank things. I've been seeing that progress live, and I knew about it coming even before they mentioned it in the meeting. So it's interesting.
So we
But
think they're trying to jump on the charity bandwagon now that Australia's we've here in Australia they've decided to go after them for not joining the redress. Do you reckon that's what they've done?
I missed the question.
In Australia, the government has named and shamed the people, the
Right.
organisation not joining the redress. So do you think them doing this charity food drive now is to jump on that charity bandwagon so that they don't get harassed by the governments?
I think they just do different things in different countries. So the way they handle things in the States, where we live, or I live, is done differently than they would do in Australia. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do in Australia, but I think they've gotten themselves into a little bit of trouble there. It'll be curious to see.
It was a strange coincidence that came up at the same time, that's all.
I suppose it's the mentality that if you can take advantage of the system, take advantage. And I think that's what they're doing. That's it.
They will always do that. And, the whole business model that is built, after they lost, the Swaggerty thing, that they give you literature and they ask for a donation. And they say now that the literature is free. It's not, because the publisher has the main responsibility. So if you take a bunch of literature to give away for free, you're supposed to pay for it. So there's still someone paying for it. And they build this, according to Watchtower, the biggest printing operation in the world without fixed prices. It's still a business model. And
I always ask them what price for this or that, and they're very hesitant to tell you. But I keep pressing them, and eventually they'll give me something,
Yeah, but now they say, with this food bag, you will save a part of your grocery bill, and that is Jehovah Witness lingo for the money you save does not belong to you; it belongs to Jehovah. And they also said that these food things should go to everyone. So even if there's a congregation with only rich people, because there's a lot of successful window cleaners, they should get this bag anyway.
Well, it's funny because in the meeting a couple of days ago, one of the sisters had mentioned she went to another congregation for her granddaughter or something like that, and she saw that they were giving all this food away to the various members of the congregation. And her response was, well, I'm sure they were all in need. But there was an awkward silence from the elders after that, and a pause. And then one of the elders said, well, there's plans in motion and they're rolling it out slowly over several congregations, but several members in our congregation will benefit. I don't think I'm going to benefit because they don't know me from Adam,
Yeah, but think about it now. The same business model. When I was a kid, they told us everyone should have their own theocratic library. Yeah. So in my family, we were 5 kids, so we had 7 prescription of Watchtower, 7 prescription of Awake. And then we bought bound volumes, and they were selling their own product to their own members. But still, we're talking about nickels and pennies, and they managed to make a profit. People spend more money on groceries than on literature, even if you're a Jehovah Witness with a lot of books.
Yeah.
So now, if they manage to get the system, they managed to collect food from surplus. There's surplus everywhere in America, and they start begging from farmers, begging from this, begging from that, and they have this distribution system run by witnesses, and they pay for their own petrol and everything. Imagine if the 1 million Jehovah Witnesses in America, and let's say that they guilt trip them to give them 10% of their grocery bill. That's way more than they spend on literature.
Well, it was interesting
because
because
a lot of money.
They were mentioning in the meeting 2 weeks ago that because they're not going to the Kingdom Hall, that they were able to cut their monthly donation down a third. So they're also losing money because they're not taking as many donations in.
Okay.
So that was an interesting statement. And they said how much? I think it was a third of the price was $500. So that's what, $1,500 per month for every single individual making donations. That's quite a bit of money from an entire congregation.
Yeah. No, it's weird. I actually was thinking before this that if I were Watchtower, well, I guess it's growing up a witness, you think like them. And, I work in the food industry, so to speak. So I was thinking, why don't they take advantage of this, all the food collected and distributed and stuff like that? And, well, maybe they read my mind and now they start doing it. But like in America, 1 million Jehovah's Witnesses, and you give food boxes, and like they said, they give you even if you don't need it. If you're well off still, they will come and drop off a food of old fruit, and you're supposed to pay for it.
I have family who are dairy farmers, and it doesn't matter if the government helps or not. They struggle. It's a difficult lifestyle, difficult job.
Mm.
And then if you don't pay into our Social Security in the States, being a farmer, how can you retire? It's difficult.
Yeah,
I'll make a coffee now.
You're going to make a coffee? Okay. Thanks for logging on. So now I'll remove you. Yes. So she was declared bad association. Nah. So if there are any on my patrons, they have the link and they can just go on. I see Gina. If you have a question for Jeff. So, okay. So what more stories will you tell? You don't have to tell the whole stories, but you can give us teasers for your channel.
There's a lot of things that are coming up, and some people have some comments, but the 2-witness rule, the history of that, of course, is important, I think. The sheep and the goats is coming up.
Yeah.
Editing the man who dared disfellowship Judge Rutherford and his trip to the burlesque, the nude burlesque.
Strip club.
Yeah, if you want to put it lightly. I have a list of maybe 30 or 40 subjects that we have. Armageddon and how that evolved over the last century.
Yeah, Russell had a nice Armageddon. Almost no one would be killed.
Everyone is going to make it out in his Armageddon, right?
Yeah.
But Rutherford, I think Rutherford's problem was his prison experience. If you look at his writings and the things he said and did before he went to prison versus the time he came out of prison, there's a remarkable difference in the man.
Could you repeat that?
So before Rutherford went to prison and after, there's a remarkable difference in the man. The things he said before versus after, he became a very bitter man, very angry man. And I think that prison experience is what pushed him over the edge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just looking at the timing of it, if you look at the writings, just based on the documentation that we have available, it's difficult, it was difficult then versus now. Then you could leave and you could still have some kind of communication with your family members. Now, if you leave, you lose your mother, your father, your wife, it's a very difficult situation. And people are just drastically affected on an emotional basis, psychological basis. It's terrible.
Yeah, it is.
Disfellowshipping, we want to look into that, the history of that.
Yeah, because I was thinking about the guy in Norway that built military installation. There was an elder in my congregation that showed me some military installation he built while he was a Jehovah's Witness. He wasn't an elder then because they didn't have the elder arrangement, but still. And kudos to him for admitting that he'd done it, because after the war, people would just whitewash their own history and said, oh, I didn't do anything during the war. But in fact, everyone cooperated with the Germans. Most people did, because they were well-paid job and there was not so many other jobs. So at least he was honest, right, admitting it.
replacement theology. So basically saying we're Israel and the other Israel's cast off. And that one's interesting because if you try and look at it verse by verse, everything falls apart the way that they look at it.
Yeah.
For example, when they think that all the nations are going to come against Jehovah's Witnesses in the last days.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you look in Zechariah 12, the context has the nations coming against them to battle, and then the Spirit's poured out. So if you think you're Jehovah's appointed organization, and that's a future event, that means you don't have the Holy Spirit at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just by going from the end.
And also they believe basically that the anointed should be gone.
Yes, yep.
When Armageddon actually start, and Israel is a symbol of the anointed. So if the anointed is gone, how can the nations attack Israel?
Well,
that also, I think.
But even better,
really
when you go to chapter 14,
I'm starting to think that it might not be God's one true organization.
That's a very interesting point that you make. If you go to chapter 14, when all the nations come against Jerusalem to battle there,
okay.
I asked them, well, who's Jerusalem? And they say, well, that's Jehovah's organization. All right, well, who are those ones that are attacking them? Well, those are the goat-like personalities, right?
Yeah.
Where you go later in the chapter and it says, those who attacked Israel go year to year to worship the king and to worship Jehovah in Jerusalem. So I say, well, who are those nations that attacked Israel and are worshiping? Well, those are Jehovah's Witnesses. So the ones who attacked Jerusalem are Jehovah's Witnesses, and Jerusalem is Jehovah's Witnesses. So Jehovah's Witnesses are attacking Jehovah's Witnesses? The logic just falls apart completely.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
Look at the literature for the last 50 years on the website, and you look up that passage, they always skip that one every single time because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah, it's weird when you wake up and start. So I don't believe in the Bible anymore, but I remember everything, and now it's like, how could I be studying this and not see it? But you always thought that there's something wrong with me. I don't get it. There's something I don't get.
I don't think there's anything to get in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So
yeah,
just trying to follow the logic
from the Revelation. The most obvious for most witnesses that we have to push is that in the end of the 1,000 year, the other dead will be resurrected, which absolutely don't make any sense on the timeline, and it's a statement, so you can't walk around it. They just have some kind of explanation that doesn't make any sense, because witnesses believe in the end of the millennium, everyone should be resurrected.
Yeah, that's on that particular subject. I'm not familiar with that statement, because I understood that they believe that everyone would be resurrected by the end, and then there would be a testing. And yeah. I think that they look at the passage, that's Revelation chapter 20, verse 5. So I think they look at the Sinaitic manuscript on that one, where that text is not in that manuscript. And that's a manuscript from about 350 to 400 AD. So that'd be Constantine's time.
Okay.
But I've done some manuscript evidence research. When you look at chapter 20, 21, 22, in the Sinaitic, there's so many copyist mistakes that are very obvious copyist mistakes that that's why you need several manuscripts. But an example is the first chapter in the Sinaiticus of Revelation. It says there's 7 churches. It only lists 6. Because because in the column, every line starts with the word kai, and. So when the copyist is making copies, his eye just skipped a line. So there's a lot of eye skips in that particular manuscript. And Christianity was outlawed shortly before that. So a lot of the scribes would have been very new and trying to learn a new skill.
Okay. Constantine
commissioned 50 manuscripts of the Bible to be copied. So that would be about 325-ish, somewhere around there. The Alexandrian is probably one of those. the Vaticanus 1209, but that doesn't have Revelation at all, and the Sinaiticus, and probably some others as well.
Yeah, I don't get.
There should be another channel.
Yeah, but as a child, I couldn't understand the we were learning stuff at the meeting. How to explain this, how to explain that, and this might look like it's what do you say, when it's self-contradicting, and then we had this explanation why it's really not self-contradicting when you blah 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 blah. I couldn't understand why do God need a young Swedish boy to go walk around knocking in door and explain what he really meant? Why couldn't God do that himself by writing a better book? That was my big, as a child, I couldn't understand, and basically that's why I don't believe in the Bible today. I just get that like someone told me they didn't. When I was a witness, they told me don't believe in the Bible because it was written on goatskins. That's the best technology mankind had, but it's not the best technology God had. Why couldn't he write it on a hologram floating in the corner of the sky?
I mean,
because
Smith,
Google Translate itself. I can research. Okay, I speak English, but I can find some. Okay, I don't speak Romanian. I can look at Romanian web pages, and Google will help me understand it. So why couldn't the Bible just be a hologram in the sky that's written in every language?
For me, if the witnesses would have allowed differences of opinion, or at least open debate or discussion, it wouldn't be so bad. But because everyone has to have this forced unity, they have to believe exactly the same thing with no variance.
Yeah.
Forced unity isn't real unity at all.
No, it's not.
That's another discussion we have coming.
Thank you, Jerry Holmberg. That's a Swedish name, by the way. Both of them is very common Swedish. He gave a $10 super sticker. So someone asked about when did we stop believing in pyramids. What I like with the pyramids thing is that they said that they were built by Jesus. They talk about the light is getting clearer, like it's going slowly like this. But they actually said first the pyramid were built of Jesus. And then they said, no, they were built by Satan to trick us. And then they say they were built by the Egyptians.
Well, that one's interesting. And I think it's tied in. I think the reason it was changed is because it was tied into 1925 failure. So if you look at one of our videos, we had, if you see the video with Judge Rutherford at the pyramid, there was a whole film they made with Judge Rutherford going to visit the Great Pyramid of Giza. And they have a diagram, a chart, showing 1925 measured in one of the passageways.
Okay.
Well, instead of admitting he was wrong in 1925, he just got rid of everything that would have been associated with 25. And I think that's why he dumped the pyramid and ended up dumping pretty much everything that had been believed within a decade or so.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to follow that. To follow it through. There's an interesting book called Desolations of the Sanctuary I found that was written in the 30s, and it documents a lot of those changes. That one was very interesting. Emil and Otto Sedlak of Switzerland, I believe. But all the watchtowers are in the German versions, so they don't match the month and year of the English ones, so it's always difficult to find and verify.
Yeah.
But it's out there. If you Google it, you can find a PDF of it.
PDF of what?
Of the book called Desolations of the Sanctuary.
Desolations.
By Emil and Otto Sedlak. That one documents the changes by someone who lived through it. So, or by brothers who lived through it too.
It's weird when they just change things and they basically remove the whole religion. Kind of like the types and antitypes. That was basically the base for our understanding of the Bible when I was a kid, and when you were a brother and you were giving, the number 2 speech, you would read a passage from the Bible, and it was basically you would read a passage, and then you would, after reading it, you would say, what does this mean in our days? And then you would say, well, this represents that, and this represents that, and the tree with 5 branches represent the new printing press in Holland, and everything was. Every scripture, it was easy when you were a boy and you're going to give a speech number
But they
2.
dropped that
You can
now,
just
right?
ask, what does this represent in our time? And then it was, the anointed in 1922, and they
Well,
just removed everything.
Yeah, Rutherford mentioned that they changed that, and that's one of the reasons he was very upset with the governing body. But when you look at that article in 2013, it's in the same exact issue where they go through the parables of Matthew 24 and Matthew 25, including the sheep and the goats.
Yeah.
And that's when they start generalizing everything. That's the same exact issue.
Yeah, because
fighting with the sheep and the goats again.
If there's no double fulfillment, well, then the whole parable of Matthew 24 is gone,
Yeah.
Because the only reason why this made sense was because this types and antitypes was all consistent through all the Bible.
And because
when they removed
prison,
it,
right? And because Rutherford went to prison, right?
Yeah, but they could be wrong about stuff. That's okay. But kind of the key to understand Bible was the types and antitypes, and then it was also easy to justify all the bad stuff that was done. Like Lot was offering his virgins to the crazy neighbors, his virgin daughters, because there was a bigger fulfillment. So the end justified the means. This was going to teach us a lesson that was important in the future. But now it was just a crazy guy, with no respect for women.
So
but
that's
then stuff like Matthew 24, when you remove the types, antitypes, well, then
it's meaningless.
It's meaningless. Yeah. And witnesses couldn't understand that.
And where's your authority? Well, the authority is all now just supposed authority, because they can't really prove anything from their context. So in the sheep and the goats one that we recorded a couple of weeks ago and that I'm editing now, I'm going to actually talk about this article about the removal of the types and how it ties in with the sheep and the goats parable and the faithful and discreet slave class in the same issue. And oh, by the way, that was the same exact issue when, was it Mark Sanderson was appointed as governing body? So they go through this whole explanation and say, oh, by the way, we have a new governing body member, because they're trying to prove their authority. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I remember I asked my now ex-wife when they removed the types and antitypes, because if you remove the idea with types and antitypes, then Matthew 24 has no fulfillments. I asked her, and she studied it, and they said, well, how do we know that it has a double fulfillment? And they said, well, some of the things that what Jesus said did not come to fulfillment, at that time. And therefore we know it has a double fulfillment. Well, if it didn't come to fulfillment, that would mean he was a false prophet. You can't do that. If I get a fulfillment now, a prophecy, I say a prophecy, this, and that will happen, 5 things. And 4 of those things will happen. It doesn't mean it has a second fulfillment in the future. It means I'm a false prophet.
Well, because there's a pestilence now proves that we're in the last of the very part of the last days, undoubtedly the last of the last days, right?
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, because they talk about the Spanish flu, and that's literally 100 years between, with no pestilence. So no, it's weird. It's weird to look at all these stupid things. There's one thing: their religion is wrong. Like, I don't believe in the Bible. So, but that apart, that they are actually wrong about the Bible. Because you can, the elders might be wrong, the organization might be wrong, but you always thought, they would never lie about the Bible. That's the one thing they never would do. And then you find out, like, the translation of how they use the word temple and tabernacle in the New Word Translation of the Revelation. They actually use it to fit the doctrine, That's the lie. There's no other, because when Pioneer School, we always were told that what was special with the New Word Translation was that it's consequent. You know, it always translate one Hebrew word with.
It's like a concordant type of translation, or
Yeah.
a more literal word for word translation rather than a paraphrase.
Yeah, but if there's one word like soul in the
Mhm.
Bible, we will always translate it to soul in English or Norwegian.
But they
So
don't.
they will not say that the person that sins will die. They will still use the word soul. So we were proud about that. But then you see in the Revelation, they actually they mix the word tabernacle and like to fit the doctrine. Like when the great crowd is on, I think the actual scripture says in Greek that they
In the
are
naos. In the sanctuary.
Yeah, in the sanctuary,
Yeah.
and they tried to turn it into they were in the courts of the
where
temple.
the Gentiles were, right?
Yeah, the Gentile courts of the temple, but the sanctuary did not have that court. So they mistranslated to fit the doctrine.
Well, they
Stuff
did
like
correct
that.
And at around 2013 or so, they did correct that, because that's
They
a
did.
discussion. Some of the discussions we're going to have on our channel are discussions I've been practicing with this Jehovah's Witness. So one of our future discussions will be, where is the great crowd? You know, what do you do with Revelation 19 that says, well, the great crowd is in heaven? Well, no, that's not the same great crowd. Well, how do you know it is or it isn't? Just because the organization tells you. So actually go through, and I already have a PowerPoint made that I shared with them, but showing the meaning of this word, the sanctuary, the naos, and where it was, and the correction that they made. A lot of witnesses aren't even aware that they made a correction a few years ago.
Yeah. We have people from China even. That's cool. XJW Philippines from China. That's cool. No, I'm getting tired. It's 2:30.
Must be pretty late
here in
there.
Norway. Huh?
And the sun's still up, right?
I can watch. Look. Well, the sun is not up, but I could go outside and read a book. I could not read my Bible outside now. I think it's too dark, but no. It would be no problem to go out and read a book if I wanted to. So the sun goes down here, like under the, you know, the expression in the Bible, between the two nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what happened here. The sun goes down, but it doesn't get dark because the atmosphere is still lit up, and the sun is very low the further north you come, you know. So even when the sun goes down, it's still light, you know. So it's never dark, but we don't have midnight sun where I live because I live too far south. We'd have to go much more north. Kim Mike is here. Howdy.
Yeah, Kim and Mikey advertised for us as well. Thank you, both of you.
Yeah.
Do you have a question? It would be nice.
Huh?
I was asking Kim and Mikey if they have a question. It would be nice.
Oh, Kim and Mikey, yes. Do you have a question? Hello, friends, they say. See if they hear us. Yeah, they have to think about it, maybe.
I like the acronym they made about ZEMO. Zoomed in,
ZEMO.
mentally out.
Zoomed in, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, become more and more acronyms. They're just enjoying the show. Okay. No, that's Mikey. He saw, he read the word striptease, and that's why he joined in and just enjoyed the show. He had the wrong expectations. Sorry, me.
They actually sent me some photos or some pictures of that burlesque, so I'll put some appropriate black bars when I put it on the screen.
Yeah, that's the difference between a historian and a YouTuber. He called it burlesque. I call it strip club, and I wanted to.
Right?
Yeah, but I'm more tabloid, of course, because that's my job. I wanted to say that Rutherford killed the guy, and technically he did. Shot the guy. Yeah.
Well, his brother.
Yeah, but it's still Rutherford.
Yeah, this is true.
From a tabloid point of view, it's true. You can tell the story short.
And that's on our discussion. But one of our videos we recorded is on the death threat of Judge Rutherford. And
Yeah.
I have a couple letters that are written by him. One is completely written out in his hand, and another is typed and then has his signature. But I have the envelopes they were in with the postmark. And Rutherford basically says, should my brother ever kill me, see to it that he be not prosecuted. Leave it entirely in the Lord's hands. Well, in doing the research, this happened just a couple of weeks before the death of Charles Taze Russell. And it was a family squabble they were having over a farm and how to and selling it. But his own brother threatened to kill him. So I researched his brother and found some interesting stories. And his brother kept getting in trouble with the law. And I have the newspaper articles.
But he was a police officer.
Yeah, he was a police officer. He was also a fireman at one time. I didn't put that story in there. But he actually was able, in the middle of the night, was able to get to someone's house and pull him out of the fire before the place burned down. But he happened to conveniently be walking by in the middle of the night.
Okay.
But he shot a kid in the back who was trying to escape and caught perjured a couple of times.
Like America to me. I'm sorry to say that.
It was the wild, wild west, right?
Yeah, but it still is, I think.
Yeah.
At least that's the impression I get when I turn on my TV.
Watch Star Trek, and I remember them Spock calling it cowboy diplomacy. So
yeah,
I'm a Trekkie.
Yeah, it's sad. Anyway, like I said, technically, Rutherford shot a guy. So, but it was his brother, but also called Rutherford. So no, I recommend his channel. It has some funny things there. So we can learn more about the crazy, and we know they change stuff, but they change much more than we knew about. It's just the tip of the iceberg, you knew, kind of. And one question I have, I've been thinking about, the Betsarim.
Yeah,
you probably heard about it, but it was supposedly built for the. The faithful princes and stuff like that. But how did he sell the idea that the princes, because what we believed was that they should rule from Jerusalem, and they should use the radio and the airplane to rule Earth, You could log on and listen to a speech from Abraham through radio that would be broadcasted. They went to certain length to explain, how wonderful this earthly government from Jerusalem would be, and they would use radio and airplane and vacuum cleaners, and everything. But then he built this mansion in California, not in Jerusalem. How did he sell that?
That's a very good question, but I think it's as simple as he claimed to have deeded it over to them, and we have, copies of that deed where he signed it over to them, right?
Yeah.
I think he was just selling the idea to, maybe they'll come and live here because we're going to give them the property. They're going to need someplace to live, so let's buy it for them now, right?
Yeah.
But
you need an explanation,
No, you don't. With all the things that he was bringing in, there was no explanation. If he had all the authority, hey, I went to prison, so it proves I'm the chosen one. He can say anything he wants if everyone thinks he's the chosen one.
Yeah, but I also think that wishful thinking is a very important force in how we work, and in American religion, and a lot of American. We are patriots, So I think it's easy to sell the idea. Well, maybe they will spend more time in America than in Jerusalem.
That's because Americans are so egocentric. Everything has.
Yeah, but everyone is. If there would be a world government run by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I would prefer them having some kind of capital in Norway. It would feel safer. So it's probably not a difficult sell to an American audience to say, well, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, well, they will probably spend a lot of time in California.
Well,
that's basically what people want to hear.
They must have spoken English up until the time of Babel, and then they made all the other languages. But the pure language will be English in the paradise, right?
It will. I know the moon is.
I'm just being facetious.
Korean. The moon is.
The
They
Moonies?
believe, yeah, the real language should be Korean. So, no. Oh, I'm tired now. So
Yeah.
this was just.
Thank you, Jonas. This was fun.
This was fun. Next time we should prepare what we're gonna say, so we're just not talking crazy. So no. So this. It's difficult.
Which
This
side
guy,
are
he
you on?
has a great channel, and it's just getting better and better. So please subscribe to his channel, and we will make more videos later. Now I just have to go to bed. So
Leave us some comments and give us some suggestions, just like he did on the Bessarim.
yeah,
Leave some good questions, because this helps prepare. I might not think of some of the silliest or craziest questions, but they could be helpful.
yeah, this is actually fun. So okay, so we can talk about later with the military service thing.
Oh, that's interesting, because
That's actually interesting, because I was, well, not drafted, it was mandatory, but they came with bus, picked us up, took us to Stockholm, we had to do all this test, and you're pumped up and you think you're gonna be executed. But for me, I was thinking about the scripture that says that if someone gives you order you to serve for 1 mile, you should give him 2 miles. So in my mind, I couldn't understand, why can I not do serve,
But remember,
in a non-violent capacity? But you just assume that the governing body knows something that I don't. so for me, it was a real thing. We talked about being tortured and executed, and a young guy is 17 years old, and the government come with a bus, just put you on the bus and drive you to Stockholm. It's kind of a scary thing.
Talk about Stockholm syndrome,
No, but
that's a good question, because I think the idea of conscientious objection changed from the time of Russell to the time you got to Rutherford.
Yeah.
And there's actually a book written by a Jehovah's Witness on the subject called Bible Student Religious Conscientious Objectors in World War I Britain.
Yeah.
A gentleman named Gary Perkins. He actually details that out pretty well. So if you're interested in history.
No, yeah,
from a
but
JW perspective.
we should make well, you should do all the job and I take all the glory. We should talk about that one and see how it happened, because when you're in the religion, it's real, and you think you're going to be executed. And I behaved like a moron, because I was a teenager, so you're angry at the world and you believe. So I yell, I was rude and self-righteous to, the officers doing all the tests in the interviews and stuff like that. So, but they were used to teenagers, that's their job. I wasn't the first angry teenager.
And my cousin just went to the army, or my nephew actually went to the army yesterday or day before, so fairly recent.
Yeah. But like I said,
I was a pacifist, but
yeah, I'm still a pacifist. But well, I changed my mind. I think all nations should have one soldier. So if something happened, you call the soldier.
They should just play video games, and whoever wins.
Yeah.
War games.
Anyway, so we should make a video about that later, and you do all the research and find out. You know when this makes me angry. When Jesus said, if someone gives you service for 1 mile, you should go 2 miles. You know what he was talking about?
Do I know what he was talking about?
Yeah.
I think he was just he liked to explain how to live by the ideals, right?
Yeah.
So he would always give you the best, most idealistic way that you should live your life.
Yeah.
So
Watchtowers say that we don't know what he was talking about, but
really?
That's a lie. Believe it or not, they actually lie. They had a law in the Romans. They had this road system with a stone that pointed every mile.
Right.
And they could tell you to carry their backpack until the next stone. So normally you would pick up the backpack and carry his backpack, but then when you came to the stone, you would just throw it to the ground, fuck you, and go on. And Jesus said you should go an extra mile. But that is very literally military service. You are working in the logistics.
I'm going to research that. That sounds fascinating.
And still,
hadn't heard
yeah.
that
So
before.
I'm pissed about that because it's a real thing.
No,
Young
I live in
brothers
America,
spend
of course, and I'm very
decades in
appreciative.
jail for refusing to work as window cleaners at a hospital because the governing body said so. And then, according to Crisis of Conscience, a majority of the governing body wanted to change this, and it was obvious in the Bible, obvious to me as a kid. And well, thank God, Sweden is a very functioning democracy. So they just, and pragmatic. So they just say, "Oh, you're a Jehovah's Witness. Get out of here." Yeah, they literally did that. They changed the legislation so Jehovah's Witnesses were not allowed in the army because we were just so weird. So they even tried to, according to Watchtower, and I think this might be true, because Sweden is very pragmatic. So they actually at one point should have said that, can't you just do pioneer service as your service to the government? They were probably just brainstorming. So I don't think it was like from the government official. But still, the brothers said, no, we cannot do it if it's mandatory because we have to provide an answer to Satan's challenge,
I have a friend who's in our Army National Guard, and he's in charge of the selective service, the conscious objectors in a particular state. And so I was talking to him about my position. I appreciate the freedoms that we have in our country very much, but some people fight for the right of others not to fight. But it's interesting. This history is very, very interesting. So I'm going to add that to our list, Jonas. Discussions. I like that.
So I'm tired now. I'm rambling. So it's soon 3:00 in the middle of the night here. So thank you for watching, and thank you, Jeff, very much. And say the name of your channel again.
WT-history or WT History, Watchtower History. Just look up Judge Rutherford Death Threat and you'll find it.
Yeah. Okay. So
like
thank you everyone for watching. And now I will end the broadcast. So see you in paradise.